In this video you will learn step by step how to dye a skein of yarn with natural dyes. You can do this at home in your kitchen with just a couple of tools and ingredients. I have dyed hundreds of skeins of yarns before and I will show you exactly how to do it. If you watched the video and later on want to read through all the steps again in a written format, you can download my free Natural Dyeing for Beginners guide. You can find the link in the description box below. Hi, I'm Annika. I'm a natural yarn dyer and I teach people how to dye yarn and fabric at home using natural dyes. Let's get started. How do you get from this to this? If you want to dye an undyed skein of yarn using natural dyes, there are 8 steps in total you will have to take to create a beautiful skein of yarn like this. Let's have a look at the tools and materials you need. To dye yarn, you need an undyed skein of yarn, of course, the dye stuff you want to use. In this video we are going to use onion skins. You will need a pot with a lid, a bucket or a washing pan, a spoon. It can either be wooden or stainless steel, a kitchen scale, some kind of string. I usually use jute or cotton twine, and this is optional. If you decide to filter off the dye stuff before the natural dyeing process, you will need a sieve. And to remove all of the small particles, I usually add just some old cotton cloth, which I put inside the sieve, and then filter the dye stuff off. Now, what I didn't mention in this list is a mordant. A mordant is a substance you can use to increase the color fastness of natural dyes. Since the whole mordanting part can be a bit overwhelming if you have never dyed a skein of yarn before, I decided to use a dye stuff that does not require the use of a mordant because it is color fast in itself. But if you are interested in mordanting, I'm going to make a video dedicated solely to the topic of mordants very soon. Like I said before, you can dye yarn with natural dyes in your kitchen, on your stovetop, but just be aware it should be done in a well ventilated area. You could also opt for using a cooking plate that you just put on your patio. That's what I usually do. I'm going to link all of the tools and materials that I use in the description box below for you. The first decision you have to make is which kind of dye stuff you want to use. There are a number of natural dye materials that are suitable for beginners. I usually recommend onion skins because they are readily available and a form of kitchen waste and very easy to use for natural dyeing beginners. There are 8 steps of the natural dyeing process. The first step is prepping the yarn. Segment the yarn into different sections in order to prevent tangling in the dye pot. Divide the strands of the hank into 2 parts and use a tie to wrap it around in the shape of an infinity sign. Create at least 4 different sections. The next step is scouring. The yarn has to be completely wet in order to take up the mordant evenly. Gently squeeze out the excess water before placing it in the mordant solution in the next step. The third step of the natural dyeing process is mordanting. Now, like I've mentioned before, mordanting can be a bit overwhelming, and this is why we are going to omit this step in this tutorial, because we are using onion skins, which are rather color fast in itself. However, if you want to know exactly how to mordant a skein of yarn, I'm going to link 2 of my blog posts in the description box, which will tell you in detail how to mordant a skein of yarn. The fourth step is extracting the dye. In order to do that, you take a pot, place your onion skins in it. I used 10 grams of onion skins and fill the pot with water. Then you slowly heat the pot until simmering and let it simmer for about an hour. Afterwards, you let the dye solution cool off and sit overnight. This increases the color intensity. This process is highly dependent on the dye stuff you use. Some plant materials are very sensitive to heat and have to be processed rather carefully. Others need to be soaked in water for several days in order to extract the dye. The fifth step is optional, and it is filtering off the dye stuff. So you can either, if you created the dye bath, leave the dye stuff in the dye bath and just add the yarn to it, or you can filter it off. If you filter it off, you will get a more even color result, because there are no parts of the dye stuff that are touching the yarn during the natural dyeing process and producing blotches of color. If you want to go for a natural look, you can decide to simply leave the dye stuff in the pot and add the yarn, and this will yield a more tonal yarn with different color intensity all throughout the skein. Like I said, if you want to filter the dye stuff off, you will need a sieve, and I also use a cotton cloth that I put in it and then just pour the dye solution through it into a different pot, and then you will have a clear dye solution that is ready to use. Step 6 is the dyeing process. Carefully put the skein of yarn in the dye solution. Try not to tangle it. Add some additional water if necessary. Then gently heat the pot and let it simmer for about an hour. Stir the yarn very gently with a spoon from time to time to make sure that the complete skein comes into contact with the dye solution. This is especially important if you aim for an even color distribution throughout the skein. I usually let the yarn stay in the dye solution overnight and check on the next day how it looks. If I'm not happy with the color intensity, I reheat the pot again and let it cool off before processing it further. Step 7 is washing out the excess dye. To do so, you gently take your skein of yarn out of the dye pot. Carefully squeeze it a bit until most of the liquid comes out, and then put it into your bucket or washing pan that is filled with lukewarm water and a little bit of dish soap. You gently move it around, squeeze it a bit until the dye comes off. Then you take it out of the bucket and put it under some running lukewarm water and wash it out until the water runs clear. Then you take the bucket or washing pan again, fill it with lukewarm water and a mild wool detergent, put the yarn in, wash it a second time, and that's the washing step. Now the last part of the natural dyeing process is drying. There are several different ways to dry your skein of yarn. What I usually do is simply take it out of the water bath, gently squeeze out the water, very carefully wring it a bit, and then just hang it up to dry. What you could also do is use a spin dryer or even just a salad spinner to remove more of the excess water. This will mean that the yarn will dry more quickly. And what you do, you just simply hang it outside to dry or just on a drying rack. And that's it. That's everything you need to know to dye your first skein of yarn. I hope this video was helpful to you. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, please leave a comment below. And also please make sure to like this video and subscribe. I have lots more videos on natural dyeing topics coming in the future. Bye guys!